Hey everybody, how's it going? Matthew Kadish here, author of the Earthman Jack Space Saga, available over on Amazon.com, so if you want to support the channel, go check me out over there. But today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is the upcoming streaming wars. So for those of you who don't know, or maybe aren't as tuned into this stuff as I am, the streaming wars are basically the next generation of how we consume television content. And it's about the battle between all the different service providers, which are basically the people who create the content as opposed to the cable companies, and their efforts to get you to adopt their platform and consume their content over other people's. And this has been kind of set up for some time now. It started with Netflix and Amazon, and now it's starting to branch out into other things like Disney, Warner Brothers, NBC, Universal, Comcast, Apple, all these places. They're all gearing up to offer their own premium, over-the-top subscription streaming service. Now, for those of you who subscribe to some of these things like Netflix and so on, you'll know that in order to have a successful streaming service worthy of your monthly subscription fee, it all comes down to content. The service basically has to have the type of content that you want to consume to justify it having the price. And this is why cord cutting with the cable companies has become so popular, is because when you pay for cable, you get all this stuff that you don't want and that you don't watch. And the stuff that you end up watching is very narrow. It's very small. It's maybe like the big, broadcast cable networks, and maybe a handful of the smaller cable networks like the Cooking Channel or what have you. And you tend to watch the same shows on those networks over and over again. And the big thing with the streaming services are their original series offerings, the stuff that you can't get anywhere else. So when you tune into something like Amazon and you get Carnival Row, which is an Amazon original series, and Carnival Row is only available on Amazon. You can't watch it anywhere else. Same thing with Stranger Things on Netflix. You can't go to Disney's streaming service and watch Stranger Things, just like you can't go on Netflix and see The Mandalorian, which is going to be one of Disney Plus's flagship original series. Now, the original series offerings are interesting simply because they're the things that are unique to each streaming service. But the bigger thing is going to be what older content is going to be available on these streaming services. And this is actually something that's been kind of overlooked in the coverage of these upcoming streaming wars, is that even though content is king, new content is not necessarily the thing that's going to keep people subscribed to these services for the long term. Because once you blow through a season of a new original series, you get bored. You've already seen it. You want to move on to something else. Chances are you might unsubscribe. But I know CBS All Access ran into this problem with its Star Trek Discovery series, where it premiered a new season of Star Trek Discovery, and people would subscribe and watch it, and then once the season was over, they'd unsubscribe and move on. So when it comes to keeping people subscribed, you need to keep giving them content that they want to watch. And Netflix kind of stumbled onto this early on, where it acquired a lot of very popular older TV shows, things like The Office and Friends and things like that, and provided them to their subscribers. And those were some of the most watched series on the service. And that was one of the big things that kept people subscribed to Netflix, is because they could just watch those wonderful shows on demand anytime they wanted through Netflix. And once the other competitors caught on to this, they started pulling this content from Netflix to be used for their own services. And we actually got an interesting article over here from Bloomberg Business Week that we're going to hop over to. And the title is Sunday Strategist, the New Fight for Old TV. This is about breaking down the boldest bets in the business by Claire Sudath. I don't know how to pronounce her name. But anyway, we're going to go through this article and kind of talk about how valuable older TV shows are to these streaming services. In the next few months, entertainment companies have spent nearly $2.5 billion on the streaming rights to old TV shows. Now, this is interesting because a lot of these companies are spending billions of dollars ramping up production in new content. And it turns out that they're also spending a lot of money on older content. NBC paid $500 million to take its own sitcom, The Office, off Netflix and put it on its upcoming streaming service, Peacock. Now, this is interesting because this is the first I've heard of NBC's streaming service's name. I guess it makes sense to be called Peacock, but it's kind of a dumb name for it. You'd think it'd be like NBC Plus or something like that. But this is going to be NBC Universal / Comcast's streaming service. And The Office was definitely a big get for them, even though they had to pay out the nose to, I guess, terminate their contract with Netflix for it. HBO also snatched a sitcom from Netflix, paying $450 million to bring Friends to HBO Max. It then dropped even more money, $1 billion, for Big Bang Theory, while Netflix, not to be outdone, shelled out $500 million for Seinfeld. This is kind of interesting because I know Big Bang Theory is a big draw for the CBS network, even though Warner Brothers produces it. They were the ones who actually made the show. So I don't know what the deal is with CBS. If Warner Brothers paid CBS that $1 billion for Big Bang, or if it went to Netflix, it's kind of unclear in this article. I wouldn't be surprised if that was Netflix money, but it's kind of funny here because Netflix basically just took the $500 million that NBC gave it for The Office and then shelled it out for Seinfeld. I'm not quite sure what the deal is with that because I believe Seinfeld is also a Warner Brothers production, and it doesn't quite make sense that they give it back to Netflix after buying out Friends, but what do I know? Much has been made about streaming TV relying so heavily on network content. Oh, the irony, wrote Chicago Tribune in June when Nielsen reported that the most popular series on Netflix wasn't one of its original critically acclaimed shows, but instead the NBC sitcom The Office. It is, of course, slightly strange that a 20-year-old sitcom still retains such a magnetic appeal, New York Magazine remarked this month about Friends. But really, it's not strange at all. Nickelodeon learned of the appeal of old TV shows 34 years ago, but back then it wasn't Jim and Pam, it was Lucy and Ricky. The network solved the problem of what to do at night when its core audience was doing homework or had gone to sleep by airing old shows their baby boomer parents already knew and loved. The strategy worked. Nick at Night's reruns of Green Acres and The Dick Van Dyke Show regularly came in third or fourth in the ratings. The boomers weren't the only ones watching. Our demographics tell us that both kids and their parents are watching, a baffled Linda Kahn, Nickelodeon's then vice president of acquisitions, told the Associated Press in 1988. We're not sure who is dragging whom to the TV set. Gen Z may not have been old enough or alive enough to see Ross yell, "We're on a break," the first time around, but there's something inherently comforting about watching television made in an earlier time. The 30-minute TV version of the world always seems simpler. Friends characters don't use smartphones. The Office is about salaried employees who work normal hours and have health insurance good enough to cover rabies. That's not to say that innovative genre-defying new shows aren't important. Netflix wouldn't be the most popular service if all it offered was stuff we've already seen. But in terms of sheer numbers, escapist weeknight habits are a big part of why we watch TV. The winner of the streaming wars will be the service that offers the best mix of groundbreaking originals and beloved classics. Judging from Nielsen numbers and the popularity of a certain t-shirt, the top draws are still The Office and Friends. Of course, if you want to find Nick at Night's old programming, you'll have to turn to Hulu. It's the home of I Love Lucy, The Dick Van Dyke Show, and The Mary Tyler Moore Show. And of course, CBS All Access has a lot of these older programming shows, all of its network shows. And I think a lot of the studios that do these network programmings, the NBCs, the ABCs, the Foxes, all these major broadcast networks, they have a leg up over companies like Netflix and Amazon because, they've been producing this stuff for years. They have a big content library. That's one of the big draws of Disney Plus, is that in addition to all of its original content, which it's producing, it has a massive library of legacy content. We're talking about all the Disney movies. We're talking about all the Disney Channel cartoons. We're talking about ABC's content, like all the sitcoms, all the, hour-long dramas and stuff like that. And so, these new streaming services are coming to the plate with, a big library already, kind of backing them. And Netflix is kind of scrambling to, compete with that, which is, I think, very interesting. And so it also comes down to what classic TV shows were produced by what studios, because like this article says, we've got Warner Brothers, who basically produced and owns Friends, and then you've got NBC, which produced and owns The Office, and I believe, if you look at some of the most watched sitcoms and television shows out there, they all fall into a different kind of studio. So, it's no longer feasible to just go to one streaming service and get all the classic shows that you want. You're going to have to, decide which do you like more, Office or Friends, because that's going to determine what streaming service you might subscribe to. And it's kind of an interesting strategy, especially if some of the services that start to fail or kind of get beat out by the competition decide to start licensing out their content once more instead of holding it for their own stuff. I kind of doubt that's going to happen because it looks like, it doesn't cost these companies much to do these over-the-top streaming services. So, any money that they make off of whatever subscriptions they do, they're probably going to just keep it going. I know that, if you look at probably one of the least successful streaming services right now, CBS All Access, even that's got something like, between 4 and 8 million subscribers at the moment. And, that's more than enough monthly revenue to keep that thing going in the long term. And a lot of these companies are looking at how people are consuming media in the future on their smartphones, on their tablets, on their computers, while they're on the go. And so you don't need to be locked at home with a TV set. And so they're looking at these streaming services and the apps that deliver the content and stuff like that as the future. And the cable companies are quickly becoming the thing of dinosaurs. I think that we can definitely say that Netflix is going to be losing more of this legacy content. And a lot of these bigger studios are kind of going to be shoring up their older content and hoarding it for their own streaming services. And it's going to make it kind of difficult. So basically, you're going to have to look at what original series are coming out that you're going to want to be, watching, in addition to all the old stuff that you want access to. And that'll probably determine where your monthly fee goes for some of these things. Hopefully, eventually, we'll get some type of bundled thing where these companies team up and say hey, you can get Peacock and CBS All Access and, whatever for one low monthly price or what have you. And that'll solve some of these problems. But it would basically, by that point, just be cable 2.0. And, who wants that, really? But anyway, I found this very interesting. So let me know what you guys think about this. What classic TV shows would get you to subscribe to a new streaming service? Which streaming service do you think will have the best older TV shows on it? And let me know in the comments. And always like, subscribe, and follow. For more movie, TV, and entertainment news, be sure to subscribe to this channel. This is Matthew Kadish. I'll catch you in the next video.